It's been about a month since I made a members only video, and while I do feel bad for that, there is a very good reason for it. If you've been paying attention to the channel, you'll know that I haven't done basically anything for it in quite a long time. There are a few posts here and there and stuff like that, but mostly I've just gone completely dark. Like, I haven't really responded to many comments, nothing like that. And the reason for that is because I'm making the biggest video by far I've ever made on the channel. It'll come out to be about 4.5 to 5 hours long, and it's definitely the most complicated video I have ever worked on. And while I would love to reveal what that video is, because it is definitely going to be made and it definitely will be the next video, and it should be out in about a month or two, I'm starting to get pretty annoyed at me announcing a project and then it having to get delayed and stuff like that. So basically, I'm just not going to announce stuff until it's just done. Until literally it's like a week or two out from, when I know exactly it's going to be out, so I don't have to deal with that anymore. The one thing that I will reveal, other than the fact that it's absurdly long, is that this is the first ever video I've ever worked on that I've actually gotten some help from the research side of things. So every other video I have ever worked on, it has been primarily me doing all the research. And with that, that's why the videos take so long to make, because I'm having to research and then write and then record, and then I pass it on to one editor or another. But this video is completely different because I've actually had someone researching this topic for about 6 months. And now that he's at the tail end of that research, I'm going through and I'm double checking and polishing and stuff like that. All the stuff we'll talk about in this video. Because by teaching someone how I do research, I've had to think a lot about my own method of research, and I want to share that with you guys. So as the title of this video suggests, this is going to be all about how I do research for my videos. And it's not that complicated, it's pretty simple. The two videos I really want to use for this video itself are the Subnautica timeline and the Black Ops timeline, because before then I feel like my research process wasn't that refined, but then the Attack on Titan timeline specifically is a little bit weird because that one wasn't so much research as it was watching the entire anime and then just reordering it and polishing up that series of events. But the other videos are a lot more non-linear, and it's a lot more of me having to deep dive into the actual lore and understand fairly complex topics. The starting point in any research I've ever done for any timeline is always one thing. I look up what the series is, and I look up what in that series is canon and what is not. Just on a macro level. There are a lot of things in some franchises that on a micro level, it'll be contradictions and stuff like that, or retcons that kind of muddy the waters of canon, but I want to know generally what games are and what games are not canon. For some games, you do have to dive a little bit deeper when there's diverging plot lines, or when it's a choose your own campaign type thing, like Black Ops 2, for example. But in that case, I have to figure out what is canon, what is ambiguous, and what is not canon just outright. What just doesn't make sense. After I figured all that out, the next step is just figuring out the actual timeline of the games themselves. I want to know chronologically what the games are in, and then I basically just kind of make the list of that in a Google Doc, and I go through the games in release order. Because I found that doing them in a release order is way more helpful than chronological order. I think anyone who generally plays games will get why that's the case, but if you don't, it's basically just that you'll get context for something and you won't know where that context inevitably leads, as well as you would if you played them in release order. But yeah, the start of my research is pretty simple. It's literally me looking up what is canon and what is not, so I can cut down on, playing unnecessary games or DLCs. And then I look up the release order and the chronological order, and I kind of play them in release order, but then try to piece them together chronologically. Then it's after that point when I have this macro view of the universe of the game, as well as a respect for the games themselves, is I go through and I basically look up audio logs and I do the next step and I dive a little deeper into the story. Because the first time, yeah, I'm like really trying to understand it. I've learned that after you go through the audio logs and then go through the games for a second time, that's really where a lot of the knowledge comes from. Like, you'll forget a ton of stuff and just not catch a ton of stuff on your first time going through them, but on your second time, that's when like all the pieces make sense. A lot of the times I'll catch myself playing a game and I don't really know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know that I'm going to this area to grab this thing for this person, but I just don't really get why I'm doing it. I'm just kind of going through the motions. And in some games, that's just like the fun of the game. But in doing research for videos, you really have to narrow in on the why. And I've learned that none of that stuff comes out until my second playthrough. That may not be for everyone, but that's how it is for me. I just feel like I kind of don't really even understand games until I play them twice. So quick recap, I basically look up what's canon, then I play through the games in release order and kind of try to piece them together at a macro level. Then I'll go a little bit deeper and do stuff like audio logs, and then I will also play the game like either a second time if it's a little confusing, or I'll like watch someone else's playthrough to get more of like just basically a second perspective. Because for example, like Subnautica, it was really helpful to go back and watch Jacksepticeye's playthrough. Not his original one, which is super nostalgic for me, but his newer one when the game actually was officially released. That helped me that helped me understand the game from a different perspective, because he played the game, of course, in a different order, and he really likes going through and listening to all the audio logs. So sometimes I would catch stuff in the audio logs I didn't the first time by watching his. And that's something that you're gonna hear me talk about a bunch during this video, is just doing things twice. You will listen to audio logs the first time and you'll pick up on stuff, and just listening to them a second time, when you now have the full story of the audio logs, you'll again catch a bunch of stuff. And again, I don't know if that's just me being stupid that I don't catch everything, but I've also found it's useful to go through everything twice so I kind of double check myself. But going back to like the audio logs and stuff like that, I've gotten the question like once or twice of whether or not I go through and actually like 100% the games and collect all the audio logs myself. And I can definitively say I do not do that. One thing I really try to do when making these videos is make them as efficient as possible and try to like save myself some time, but I'm not willing to do that if it means cutting corners. So while some people might view me not collecting all the audio logs as cutting corners, I view it as somebody else has already collected all the audio logs, put them in chronological order, and put them up on YouTube already. Why am I going to collect all of them? Now, before I say anything more about that, I want to make it very clear that that does not mean I use YouTube videos to do my research. I only use YouTube videos when it's of a primary source, when it's literally just a compilation of all the audio logs, or it's a walkthrough of like the actual game that somebody just made. I will use those to do research, but never will I just look up a YouTube video explaining the lore and then take that as a source. That is one thing I never do. I have never, in the history of doing YouTube, have ever watched a timeline video to get prepared to do a timeline video. To me, that defeats the purpose, and I want to make sure that if I do a timeline video and I happen to like say something or come to the same conclusion as someone else, it's because we were both given the same information and went to the same conclusion, not that I stole it from their video. I just want to make that totally clear. When I say I look up YouTube videos of like audio logs, it's strictly that I'm looking up the audio logs themselves that have been compiled, not looking up somebody's explanation of the audio logs. Just want to get that out of the way. And because it's actually relevant to the YouTube thing, I also want to talk about fandom, which I use in two main ways. Because fandom is incredibly shitty at like actually explaining the story of games, because a lot of the times it just doesn't include stuff that you would like to know, or summarizes stuff way too much, or, you know, maybe explains stuff that you don't give a shit about. Because it's like basically shit, fandom can be used in two ways, and this is how I use it. I use it as like a transcript, basically website where it has a bunch of transcripts of audio logs. And that's one way it's pretty useful because it's literally the primary source bar for bar. Now I do double check it with the actual primary source to make sure they're not like misinterpreting or changing stuff and to make sure they actually have it all. But that is one way where it's useful if I want to, confirm spelling for something, or if they say something that's kind of unintelligible, I'll go look at the source. For Subnautica specifically, it's super useful because I didn't have to go out and literally scan every single little thing in the game. The wiki itself has an entire database that's literally just bar for bar the database in the game. And I don't have to go through and collect everything manually. Now, I did double check it with my own, the ones I actually did scan from the game to make sure it made sense. And other than some grammatical errors, it was just bar for bar what it is in the game. So I took it as a primary source. The second way I use it is as a way to learn information that I don't know I am missing. So for example, I'll kind of write out an entire section of the lore and I'll be like, this makes sense to me given the information that I know so far. And then I'll go look at the wiki, let's say something's just not really lining up and I feel like there's something missing, because that happens quite a bit. I'll look at the wiki and it'll explain it in some way. And I have to then go and find how they found that information. And a lot of the times it's just me doing a second, listen through of all the audio logs, or going through and maybe finding extra stuff that I didn't already know. So yeah, basically, if they have primary sources transcribed on the wiki, those can be pretty useful. You just got to make sure you're double checking to make sure they're actually accurate, and finding information that you didn't know you didn't know. But never ever will I use it as a source of my information because, quite frankly, it's not good for that. For example, something I really struggled to understand when doing the Black Ops timeline research was the story of Black Ops 3. It is incredibly confusing, and there are literal and meta interpretations of it. So sometimes I would find myself going to the wiki to kind of straighten my information out because I wasn't super confident in it, and the wiki just wouldn't be helpful at all. It just would not explain stuff in a useful way. So after doing that once or twice for Black Ops 3, I literally just gave up, and I just decided I was going to just revise and revise and revise over and over until basically I felt like what I had couldn't be anything but the truth, because I would just go through and try to pick it apart, find plot holes, stuff like that. Same thing for something like Subnautica Below Zero, where specifically Lillian Bench's story, I just could not actually piece together how those events took place, the order of events. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the wiki and see what they say. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I go to the wiki, and her whole entire wiki, Lillian Bench's wiki, is just nothing. There's nothing there. It didn't explain anything. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'll just do it myself. And that's why at the end of the video, I say that I could have gotten it wrong, but there's no correct order because it's super ambiguous. So yeah, that's the way I use fandom. Super simple. It's just double checking my work or using it when it transcribes primary information. Also, you can tell I do exactly that because there are some times when I will just blatantly get stuff wrong because I just simply missed it. Like Borderlands, for example, I say nobody won Moxxi's tournament in Borderlands 1, but actually it's stated in Borderlands 2 that Mordecai won it, so that's just something I missed because I used to have this hard stance of no fandom at all. I just would not use it for any information because I knew I was learning how to do research and I didn't want it to become a crutch. So now I've kind of implemented it into my research process, but even then I can assure you that in future videos there will be things I miss or get wrong or misinterpret. They won't usually be huge things, they're probably just going to be small things here or there, but that's just natural. I cannot spend a year on videos, so I can't get everything perfectly right, but I do the best I can, and if I miss stuff, I just try to learn better and get better the next video. So a quick recap of my research process is that I start off by basically looking up what is canon and what isn't so I don't waste my time. Then I look at the release and canon or chronological order of the games, and I play it in release order and then kind of just line it up, like the major events and stuff like that, in just at a macro level. Then I'll go through it and kind of look through more specifics. I'll go through audio logs, I'll look at like text logs and stuff like that, and then I will go through, and if I need to collect a bunch of stuff, usually I'll try to find YouTube videos or wikis that have like the primary source of information, so I don't have to waste all my time going through and collecting a bunch of audio logs. After that point, a lot of games really don't have much lore. Like, most games are just confined to the main plots of the franchise, some audio logs, some text logs, and that's about it. Sometimes you'll get a spin-off book, sometimes it'll be a comic, stuff like that. I also read all of those when I'm doing like the games and stuff like that. But for the most part, usually that's where most games end. And after that, it's basically just me taking all that information once I have it all lined up, and I'll go through it, I'll do one draft of the script. And I'll just get all the way through it, and then in doing so, I'll find a bunch of plot holes or maybe something I've missed, stuff that doesn't make sense. Then I'll just do a few more rounds of polish. Then I just polish, and that takes us to the point I'm at now with the current video I'm working on, which is that I've given those exact tips to the person that's helping me do research. I've basically told him that is my standard. He is not allowed to take information from fandom or wikis or something like that, and if he does find information for it, he can note that that information comes from a wiki and we have to find a source for it. If we don't find a source for it, it gets scrapped, even if it's like a big part of the lore. For example, Black Ops Timeline, something that I just couldn't find a source for. I saw it on the wiki just in passing. I saw that David Mason's dad got a Purple Heart at a Macon Atoll, where like the first World at War mission took place. I didn't know where they got that information until I was like well into the script, and I just couldn't find it. So I was like, you know what? I'll just delete it. And I deleted it, and then like a week later, I went through the text logs, like the intel you find in Black Ops 1, and I finally found it. Then I added it back in. But I was not comfortable having it in the script if I didn't know where it was sourced from. I just don't trust fandom that much. And that's the exact same standard I'm going to give to anyone helping me research. I also really make sure I'm not pressuring them to like hit a certain deadline that's super fast, because research is something that if you rush it, you will end up like cutting corners. And I just don't want that to be the case. So I'll give them more than enough time to get their job done so they can just do it at their own pace and make sure they don't have to cut corners or try to plagiarize or anything. Because that's literally why that stuff happens. Most of the time it's because there's a short deadline and they just feel like to get a deep analysis, they have to steal someone else's work and they can't find the source of the information. For example, some of you might have seen that post about me making a Dying Light timeline, and that was supposed to be alongside this one that I was going to have another person research. But then Dying Light the Beast was announced to come out way earlier than expected, so we just ended up scrapping the project because I knew that that was not going to happen. The timeline just didn't make sense for me to make my video that I'm working on with the other researcher and then having another person make another video in way too short of a time. I knew it would either not be up to my standard or, something like that would happen, like plagiarism or something. So ultimately, I just decided that we would scrap the project because with that short deadline, I knew just something bad would happen and I didn't want that to be the case. That's not to say that the video will never be released because I do want to make it, but with there being two projects going on simultaneously and one of them having a super close release date, I just wasn't willing to risk it. So it'll probably just be something that comes in the future with a Dying Light the Beast DLC, or maybe it'll just come out a month or two after the game. Who knows? But other than that, I can't really think of anything else I want to mention when it comes to research. It's a super simple process. I just look at everything and put it in chronological order, and I'm just double, triple checking my work, and then doing stuff like not having to go collect all the audio logs myself to save myself some time. But I'm never using wikis. I'm never looking up like YouTube explain videos, despite that's like what my entire job is to do those videos. I'm never looking at those videos because I just don't find it fun. I want to learn the information for myself, come to my own conclusions, and it ultimately makes a better project. As for that 5-hour video, you'll probably know what it is here in about a month and a half. That's probably when I'll reveal it because then it'll be basically done. I'm super excited for it. It's a project I've always wanted to do. I never thought I would actually get around to doing it, but because the channel's been doing pretty good recently, I'm finally getting around to doing it. The next members only video will likely be just the summer update. It's been about 6 months since I gave one. I have some good personal news to give to everyone during that video. And then after that, it'll probably be related to and like revealing the next big video. And then after that, I'll talk about it more in the summer update, but after that, it's gonna be Infamous stuff. I'm actually super, super excited to get back into that franchise. I've been, for the past like 6 months, itching to do Infamous stuff again. So I can't wait to get back into that, do the Infamous timeline and stuff. But other than that, I think that's everything. If you have more questions about research, put them in the comments, and I'll see you here in about a week or two.